In this video, I'll be modeling the type of overview and discussion prompts that would be suitable to leading class discussion. I've decided to use a slide with voiceover, but you're welcome to use a simple summative document of notes or other methods for presenting your ideas. Feel free to be creative and have fun with the assignment. You can see that I've selected this very fun font for my title. Woo! So, this presentation will describe a couple of articles that's going to describe theories that are fundamental to SNA as a field and would be described as seminal works. I'll also discuss a relatively contemporary article that was the result of a course project from a class quite similar to this one. The assignment is to pair one seminal work from the list of optional readings under the course activities from this week with one contemporary article or software demonstration. So maybe you have some piece of software that you typically use that you think relates to this course in some way, or you might do a Google search and find something because you like talking about software or applied things more than articles. I did not pair this with a software demonstration, although I could have found a way to fit in Node Excel. I selected Mark Granovetter's Strength of Weak Ties as a seminal work, and I paired this with Kropczynski's Virtually Networked Housing Movement paper. Then, as a bonus, which was not at all required but born out of my own enthusiasm for this class, I shared a few notes on another seminal work, which is Ron Burt's Structure of Social Capital. I'll describe the two seminal works first, and then I'll discuss the Virtually Networked Housing Movement paper. So starting with the Strength of Weak Ties. This truly is a seminal work in this field. It's cited an impressive 34,000 plus times. There are very few papers that you'll find with this many citations. This paper is truly great. As mentioned in the course overview, social network analysis is both a theoretical and a methodological topic, so it can be difficult to disentangle the two. If you have a very proficient data analyst, but they lack the theoretical background to intelligently describe what's happening in data, and they can't talk about any previous studies that it relates to or major theories, that can be problematic. So that's why the discussion of readings was added to this course. If you tell someone you came out of a graduate level social network analysis course, but you've never heard of Granovetter or the Strength of Weak Ties, that sort of hurts the credibility of the course. It also hurts your background as a networks person. So watching these overviews or reading summative documents and discussing these concepts and theories with your classmates is going to be a practice in enhancing your own legitimacy, as well as a way to remind us that although social media has helped us grow SNA, many of the concepts and algorithms that you'll use were created very long ago, like 1973. Talk about Granovetter's motivation for this theory. He wondered, why is it that people so often get jobs from weak ties as opposed to their strong ties? That seems to be intuitive, right? So what is it about the network dynamic in this instance that makes weak ties so valuable when it comes to getting jobs? You see the message on the right? It seems like a familiar scenario. Hi, John. It's been a while. I'm looking for a job. I was thinking you might know someone. You seem to know a lot of people. So in this instance, Granovetter is referring to strong ties as those people that you're close to and are deeply embedded in your network. Weak ties are the ones that have some distance from you and from your other close ties. In short, Granovetter found that those strong ties know many of the same people as you know, but John, who you rarely talk to, who's at a distance from you and is not embedded in the same information and networks, probably has a lot more to share when it comes to who you should talk to get a job. Granovetter also posed the question, which is not written here, how do large groups coordinate in order to make things happen? For example, how do they meet a threat from the outside? So he was curious about these weak ties and how they play a role in coordinating information in groups, in addition to how they add value for one individual who's trying to find a job. Here's the summative full story or full theory in response to these two major research questions that I outlined in the previous slide. Granovetter found that if a person spends a lot of time with person A and person B, they'll most likely spend time with person A and B together at some point. The similarities that people have breed liking. So, independent of being a part of the same network, people that you like and that you spend more time with are likely to seek out the same type of information as you do. So when people are different than you in terms of the things that they like or the information that they follow, that sort of breeds this type of cognitive dissonance that separates you from them. And those individuals become more distant from you and from your friends and your social and professional networks. So they keep going out and finding the same information that they like, which is different than your own, and you keep out looking at the same information as your friends like. So these behaviors like that, A and B behavior leads to transitivity, which is that concept that if A is friends with you and B is friends with you, through a transitive property of friendship, A and B may eventually become friends with one another. In this way, only weak ties are local bridges of different or unique information. Those weak ties can reduce path length and can speed along the diffusion of information across whole networks. Thus, individuals with more weak ties will be closer to more job opportunities, and they're going to have access to more resources than people who only stay within their strong ties. Networks that have weak ties, they're going to have shorter paths, which results in faster change and an ability to coordinate over time. So this brings me to the first discussion point about this issue. You're going to see in Canvas, this should be the top one. It's going to say the strength of weak ties was written in 1973. So is this theory still true of job seeking today? And how do online networks such as LinkedIn and the endorsement of skills in these networks, which for me anyway, seems to come from my strong ties way more than my weak ties. It's my good friends who are deciding to leave comments about my work and endorsing me. So how does that change or uphold Granovetter's theory? Okay, so here's the bonus article. Like I mentioned, there's some things that you should know after coming out of a social network analysis course, and I felt that Ron Burt and just understanding what social capital was one of them. So I won't let you leave here without knowing what that is. You might already be familiar with it. So Ron Burt speaks to the structure of social capital, which is obvious given the title. You're familiar with financial capital? He describes social capital as the contextual complement to human capital. The social capital metaphor is that people who do better are somehow better connected. Social capital is so synonymous with social networks that if you do a Google image search for it, it's going to return with a bunch of sociograms. Like the strength of weak ties, it's also affected by embeddedness within a network, in addition to a lot of other things, which he tries to enumerate in this really, really long article. I'm very sorry if you printed it out. In fact, this is the main point, that social capital is a loose concept that can be tied to empirical indicators in a social network analysis. So to sum up the article very briefly, I'm going to make 3 points, which really underdoes it, but you'll get the gist, right? So first, Ron Burt refers to social capital as a competitive advantage for someone and states that many network mechanisms can be responsible for having social capital. His second main point is that he believes there's an extra special advantage to individuals whose relationships span holes in social structure of a network, or brokering structural holes. That's his big thing, like brokers and structural holes. That's Ron Burt's whole shtick. So a structural hole, if you think about, like if we see in the diagram here in this lower left-hand corner, the orange people and the blue people on the outside, a broker would be one of these orange people um, that are more closely connected with two groups. Or another way of thinking about it is if you are very tightly connected with the IT department in your organization, and you're also very tightly connected with some people from the HR department, and you know things about HR and IT and what's happening, and at meetings in your, to impress your boss, you're able to talk about what's happening in the other group really well, and that leads to better policies, better um, better things happening because you have information from both sides, then that would make you one of those brokers that's bridging one of those structural holes among people who normally are very tightly embedded with one another but don't have many ties spanning those two networks. Okay, so that was the second point. The third point is that Bert says that this is more valuable than closure of those two networks, which is about advantages that go out to people in a cohesive group. Ron Burt's bridges, brokers of information, they tend to have a short lifespan in this role because it's a lot of work to be an intermediary between portions of a network. Do you think that technology today makes this role easier, or does it act as a broker itself? I look forward to your thoughts on that. This last article was selected and it's uploaded under the optional readings in Canvas because it's an example of a simple research publication that came out of the analysis that I ran when I took an introductory social networks course many years ago. The article utilizes Putnam's definition of social capital. So Robert Putnam in the book Bowling Alone, it's a very popular book, you might have heard of it. He states that networks have value and the value that they have is social capital. And there's two particular types of social capital that he refers to, bonding and bridging. Bonding social capital is the value assigned to networks among homogeneous groups. For example, a housing assistance organization that links to another housing assistance organization. The second type of social capital is bridging social capital, and that's the value assigned to networks among heterogeneous groups. For example, a housing assistance organization that's linking to a housing research organization. So my article classifies types of organizations like this, housing assistance, housing research, and that's to identify the relationship among them as either being a bonding tie or a bridging tie. So I did that by looking at 26 national housing nonprofit organizations. And I was interested not just in, classifying those groups and looking at those bonding and bridging ties, but seeing what was more valuable to an organization. So you may have noticed I posted some Google search queries. That's exactly what I was interested in when I came to looking at these organizations. So I looked at their Google PageRank and how it was associated with having bonding or bridging ties. And Google PageRank is based on how your rank signifies how high up in a search query that you're going to be on Google. So having a higher PageRank means more visibility for your organization, which possibly means more volunteers, donations, grant dollars, all those good things associated with that. So the article sums up by saying that the bridging ties tended to have more value, possibly because of non-redundancy of information, like was the case in the other two articles, but also most likely because of the competition for scarce resources, which could inhibit that bonding social capital. So if you're competing for scarce resources like donations and volunteers, you might not want to say, here's what my other competitors are doing. You might get more value from linking to housing organizations that are much different or have a different mission statement and goals than your own. So the third discussion prompt is this article uses a theoretical background to describe the types of ties present in a network. Do you think that this theory, or maybe some other theory that you're familiar with, might describe the relations that are present in the network that you're planning on studying for this class? It doesn't have to be exact, just trying to get a feel for it based on what you know and what you think you're going to study. Could there be your theory? So I look forward to your comments, your input based on these discussion prompts, or if you did more in-depth reading, maybe there's other things that you'd like to chat about based on this. But there are three large posts, and you can reply underneath each one of them to get the discussion going about these topics. All right, looking forward to it.